We're going to go ahead and get started. First things first, I'm Kayla, one of the digital media specialists here at Panos. Joining me, we have Abby Esterbrook, who is another digital media specialist, and Kaylin Gallagher, who is one of our media managers. We're going to be chatting about all things digital media, why it's important to diversify your media, different strategies for content and platforms, and how you should measure your success once you kind of have the whole picture. Feel free to ask questions along the way. We'll open it up at the end too, but feel free to throw any questions in the chat that you have. So kicking it off, one question that we hear all the time on the media team: if search drives conversions, why can't I put all of my money there?
Yeah, that is a question that we get quite often. And specifically for search, because it does drive a lot of conversions. People want to spend the most money there. But I think we've all heard the expression, don't put all your eggs in one basket, and that applies here. You want to make sure that you're not solely depending on one platform. Paid search ads are a really amazing tool for getting in front of users who are actively searching for the products and services that you offer. And you want to have a presence there when people are raising their hand saying, hey, I'm interested in this. I want to know more. I want to know what you have to offer. But if you put all of your money into that platform, you're going to be missing out on some opportunities there. You're going to be missing out on the prospecting side of that. And also, there are a couple of key things that you need to get right in order to have the most share of voice on paid search.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying, Caitlin. And Caitlin, excuse me. But like kind of just search is so huge that it's so competitive. So being able to rank well on that space takes into effect a lot of factors. So unless you're going to have a 10 out of 10 quality score or a budget that allows for 0% impression loss, there's going to be some space missed when it comes to serving certain users. And one thing I know that Google does is they rank kind of your ads based on the copy that you have on your landing page, the content that you put in your ads, and kind of just how well those things align with each other, with what the user is searching, and what keywords you're using. So many different factors going into how your ads are ranking. And depending on how much competition actually exists in the space, it's hard to really show up in those number one or top 3 spots. So a lot of room for missed impressions. So it's great to be able to have those other efforts in order to really show up for users that you might have missed through search.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, even if we were living in a perfect world that you had the absolute perfect ads, 10 out of 10 quality score, and you had an absolute killer budget that's going to let you bid so competitively that you're going to win every single bid every single time and can be available for every impression, which, as marketers, that's the dream, but rarely does that happen. Even if all of those pieces came together, you're still only getting the people who are in that part of their journey where they're actively searching for something. You're going to be missing out on the prospecting side, which helps with the awareness piece that is really crucial to getting people to search for you. My favorite example of this, I think something we can all probably relate to, is I'm scrolling through Instagram and I saw an ad for pet hair resistant leggings. Like, I have 2 big chocolate labs at home. They shed like crazy, and I'm pretty much constantly covered in dog hair. So having leggings or any clothing item that is resistant to pet hair is like an absolute dream. But I wouldn't ever search for that. Like, I had no idea that that was a possibility, that something like that would even exist. And so by them leveraging kind of those upper funnel social tactics, those things that are geared more for awareness, they ultimately ended up getting 3 sales out of me because they were fantastic and I needed them in 3 colors. So there really is a missed opportunity if you're putting all of your money into search, because if people don't know what you offer exists or know what it is, then they can't search for you.
Right. Yeah. And kind of going off what Kaylin's saying is really important to, obviously, not everyone is going to be in that space. You want to be able to meet users where they are. So having those multiple touch points along the user's buyer journey gives you a better chance of being top of mind when they're actually going to be in market and searching for those products. So obviously users are on so many different platforms day to day. They may not actively be searching for the product that you're advertising, but providing those impressions really over time will allow you to build kind of a brand recognition. And they might see the ad and think, oh, that looks interesting. I might go back to searching for that. Or later on in their journey, they'll be searching for that same product and kind of see our ad and recognize our brand and kind of feel more comfort and more trust with it since they did see it on those other platforms and more than just that one time on search. And also with awareness ads, that's kind of one where there's more frequency to it as opposed to search, since they aren't searching for it. So we're kind of just serving it to them based on their interests. So one thing that we do recommend keeping in mind as well is creative fatigue and then creative diversification. So our kind of best practice is, creative fatigue is really when users have seen your ad so many times that they aren't exactly expressing as much interest as they were when they initially saw it. So we do recommend kind of switching out that copy or creative every 5 to 6 months, just to make sure that those users aren't seeing those exact same ads over and over again. And just diversifying our ads in the fact that kind of giving different variations of those ads as well. So having different ad groups with different headlines, different descriptions, and different images. So that platform is actually able to kind of pull from all of your content that you're providing and create multiple different ads, which really just allows your ads to run for a longer amount of time before you have to really go in and kind of create new copy and content. And then another thing we like to do is create frequency caps. So on our awareness campaigns, we often set it to around 5 impressions per day per user. So obviously we don't want our awareness campaigns to become annoying, kind of beyond the point where they're being effective. So having those caps also helps with creative fatigue and running those ads for a longer amount of time. Just overall being aware of how those ads are performing when you start to see kind of that drop off in interaction really helps, it might be time to start refreshing those ads.
And there's a really cool thing you can do to basically cheat, where if you want to have a couple of ads running, but you don't necessarily have a ton of resources, you can use one image and 2 sets of copy, and then you get 2 ads. And then it's an automatic A/B test to see, okay, what is it that our audience is responding to most? Is it copy A or copy B? Or similarly, use the same copy and you use 2 different images. If you can't decide which one you like better, run them both, see what people respond best to, and then take your learnings from there.
All right. And I think one important thing to add to that before we move on, we're talking about a lot of different points of the funnel. And one thing to keep in mind that's really important is none of this is immediate. You're not going to see the conversions right away from an awareness ad. You're not going to see for consideration. You may see a couple conversions pile in, but you're not going to see immediate results within a week, a month. It could be a couple months. So that's another thing, running ads for a longer period of time instead of, all right, we're going to run this ad for 1 month and be done with it because it didn't perform well. You want to kind of keep those ads going to keep yourself top of mind. So when they are at the next step in their journey, they'll come back around. And that's when you'll see the conversions. That's when you'll see more interaction with your landing page and such. So just kind of keep in mind that even if you're not seeing clicks, conversions, everything right at that moment in the first month of your campaign, first 2 months of your campaign, it's a journey, it's a process. You just kind of got to give it time. Moving on, now that we know why we need to diversify platforms and creative, what kind of strategies should everyone be implementing, moving into that?
Right, yeah, that's a great segue kind of into the strategies that we like to implement and kind of the process that we follow. So obviously each platform is going to play a different role in the buyer's journey. And you want to be able to engage with users, but also educate them on why they might need your product or service. So that kind of whole journey kind of hits first on awareness tactics. In the middle of the funnel is consideration, and then at the end, ultimately where we want to be, which is our conversions. So starting at the top is obviously kind of what we already went over a little bit, which is our awareness tactics. So those are things like display and social ads, which are usually visual, so often image and video based. And those are targeted to users based on known or assumed information about them. So what the platform or Google is able to collect about kind of their recent search history, what they've been looking on, we're able to target based on interest categories, and see that they might be interested in what we're advertising for and serve them ads that way. And kind of like I mentioned, those type of ads have higher frequency since, it does take a little bit more time to be able to see an ad a couple times before you recognize the logo, see a message before you recognize what they're advertising for, really just to build that brand recognition. So that's kind of the first step in the process with what we look at for strategizing.
Yeah, and so once people have that awareness, you have a solid awareness campaign out there, you want to make sure that you're able to reach them, in the consideration stage and then ultimately that decision-making conversion stage. And so while there are tactics that overlap, there are specific tactics that you want to use for each stage. So moving into consideration, getting into things like programmatic remarketing, that's going to be a big one. These are people who have already interacted with you on some level. They've gone to your landing page, but ultimately, they weren't quite ready to pull the trigger. So reaching out to them again and saying, hey, remember us, come finish that application, come learn more, come use our calculator, whatever that next step in their journey should be that's going to help them get the additional information that they want or that's helpful for them. You want to bring that back around and make sure that you're having that opportunity to bring them back to your website or landing page. Something else that often will help with consideration and then also goes into the conversion stage is paid search. So like we mentioned at the beginning here, that's where a lot of conversions come from, but also it's where a lot of the research happens. So people know about you, but then they go and they're going to do their research. Are you a reputable company? What are the reviews? What is the chatter that people have to say about you? And so making sure that you have a presence there when people are doing their research is really key for that. And so a couple of other things that you can implement is testing different types of targeting. So for your display-based ads, when you can have your remarketing, but you can also do things like contextual targeting. So these are people who are doing additional research, but instead of serving them a text-based ad, serving them an image-based ad on, say if they're looking for flights, places to go on vacation, you can then serve an ad for JetBlue, something like that, when they're looking at the top companies or the top places to vacation for the fall.
And completely agree that they do overlap because kind of moving into the decision-making stage, we really are focusing on kind of similar tactics where it's search, it's remarketing, but kind of just implementing more of a sense of urgency. So a great thing to do is to offer a promotion, especially like a limited time promotion, and you're able to kind of adjust your messaging to say, now's the time, come back and apply, especially when you're retargeting those users that initially expressed that interest, kind of giving them an additional incentive to kind of finish their process of the buyer journey just by giving those additional touch points is really great in order to actually bring that to being able to be in that decision-making stage. All of that is super great, but it obviously wouldn't have been nearly as effective if there weren't any efforts that happened before that, because we do want to remain trustworthy and like someone that they recognized or they've seen over time. Because especially in the banking world where they're looking into things with more thought and effort that goes into opening a checking account or getting a loan or something like that, we want to be able to have been one of those brands that they've seen throughout their entire buyer journey, something that seems like that aligns with what they actually want. So that's definitely an important part of getting to the decision-making stage, and having that specific messaging and those tactics. Social, appearing on all of those different platforms that they are throughout the day is also great, especially when we know that they're at the end of their journey. We want to be able to reach them when they're browsing on their phone or even searching for that specific product. Allows us to really get them to get to the end of the funnel and get to that conversion stage. And another important thing, kind of aside from just the funnel, is knowing your audience. So obviously you could be doing all the right things, but you want to make sure that you're appearing in front of the audience that you want to appear in front of. So Knowing your audience helps you know exactly where you want to be. So for example, if you're running a student checking account and you're really looking to be able to reach a younger audience, firstly, what kind of messaging is going to really appeal to that audience base? And then secondly, where are they going to be browsing? So something that we've done is coming in on those platforms that aren't as common, but more common with that younger generation. So Snapchat ads or Pinterest ads, things like that, where we really know that it's specifically more of a younger audience browsing there, more likely to actually see those ads and click on them. And then even thinking a step further with opening up teen accounts or things like that, serving ads where their parents may be. So being on Facebook, being on Instagram, just being in front of them where they're most likely to be. So we know we're reaching qualified users and not users that might be seeing our ads and not actually interested in clicking on them. And then another thing too is if we're targeting kind of more affluent users, differentiating ourselves from competition, more specifically, more reliable or more likely, excuse me, to kind of trust or use a bigger bank, kind of what messaging can we use that can kind of deter them from there and instead coming to kind of a smaller institution. Like the benefits of community banking, the trustworthiness of a smaller bank, kind of things like that, and just showing up where they're most likely to be based on what the audience is.
Yeah, and if you don't know who your audience is, there's definitely exercises that you can go through building out personas and journey maps based off of your customer data, which we could very easily do an entire another webinar on personas and journey maps. But once you do have an idea of who your audience is, test it out. You just because you have, an assumption or that it's a younger audience that you're trying to reach for your checking accounts doesn't mean that's the only people who are going to respond. So when you set up a campaign, set up different audience segments. You can have different audiences set up under one campaign, sharing one budget. So ultimately, it's going to optimize towards whichever audience is performing the best, but it'll give you some more insights into who is it that is responding most to your campaign. And you can set up your ad creative, similarly, if you have one creative geared towards a slightly older audience and one geared more towards a younger audience, you can run both and you can see, okay, is our younger audience really the ones responding to this checking account? Or are we seeing it's more of their parents, whatever that may be? You can use this information to help inform your choices for your next campaign, for your next round of creative, for your optimizations, making sure that you're constantly fine tuning and learning from your results is going to be key in helping move your campaigns forward. Test out different CTAs. Maybe a younger audience is more likely to learn more, where maybe an older, more informed audience is more likely to do something that's apply now, something more urgent. And seeing what CTAs people are responding to is going to help you identify where they are in their buyer journey. Are you talking to them the right way? Are you meeting them where they are and delivering what it is that they need to continue their journey? To kind of go off what you just said, Kaylin, too, with what kind of CTAs are working. One thing that I talked about recently with a client actually, they wanted to reach a younger audience, and the CTA on their landing page was connect with us. As a older Gen Z, I can tell you from personal experience, from friends' experience, we're not gonna call the bank. Our first option is not call. Our first option is not go in branch. We'd rather go online. We'd rather email, submit a form. We would rather be reached out to instead of us reaching out to the bank itself. We'd like to know that we already have the right person reaching out to us so we don't have to jump through the hoops, or a lot of us just don't like talking on the phone. So using forms, using even like Justin, like giving an email, or if you have the opportunity to do an application, to do an apply now, that is the more optimal CTA to go for. So that's just kind of something to keep in mind when considering what CTA you're putting on your landing page as that number one CTA. Obviously, you can still have the find a branch that leads to your locations page. You can still have the connect with us that leads to your contact page. Those are still good to have, because I'm not the entire generation either. I know a majority of us don't love talking on the phone. It's just the world we've grown up in. But there are still some people who do like to call and do like to reach out. So having those options, you still want to have them there, but they just might not want to be that number one. We do have 2 questions before we move into our last little segment.
Okay.
So kind of bringing it back to what we talked about in the beginning, we have a question from Miranda. Can you explain the A/B test more?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple of ways that you can A/B test. The most common one is probably with creative. So say you're going after an audience, we'll go with checking, and you're doing a general audience, maybe they're 18 plus with an interest in finance, something along those lines. But you're not sure what the right CTA is or what the right image is. You want to have a very specific and controlled test. So limit the number of changes between your 2 versions of creative. So you have one audience and 2 versions of creative, and say you're going to use the same image and you're going to use different copy for each of them. So you'll be able to see, okay, creative or copy 1 ultimately got more clicks, but creative 2 got more conversions. So, okay, what is it about creative 2 that's really driving those conversions? What is it that's standing out, or what is it about option 1 that maybe isn't quite meeting their needs? So you're able to, again, have very defined parameters as far as what it is you're changing and what's staying the same, to better hone in on what your results are telling you. What is it that's working? What is it that's not? And you can do things that are similar. You can use the same creative and test 2 different audiences, but ultimately, you want the changes between your 2 options to be fairly limited, so that way there aren't too many factors that could be changing your results.
All right. And then I know we're running a bit close to the end of this, but I'll touch on David's question really quick, and then we can touch on KPIs measurements super fast and wrap it up. But from David, since we are talking banking, if we are digitally advertising checking accounts, but we don't have online account opening capabilities, what is your best advice, course of action to try and either make the spend effective as possible, or your guidance on tracking effectiveness?
Yeah, absolutely. So plenty of banks don't have online account opening. That's really not that uncommon for us to see. And so there's a couple of different options that we do see our clients take. Some of them have a form that you can start online and then you have to finish in branch. That's pretty common. And then sometimes it is a matter of learn more as a CTA, or set up an appointment. Connecting with us and setting up an appointment is one that we do see regularly is not popular. It's just people don't really want to make an appointment with their bank to set up a checking account. Ultimately, for tracking, you want to be tracking whatever the lowest point in the funnel that you can take them is. So if it's someone starting an online application that they finish in branch, then that's great. If it's trying to get them to go into the branch, then maybe it's tracking them to click on to get directions. But Abby, anything that you've seen else with your clients that you want to touch on?
Yeah, I know that I recently had kind of this issue with one of my clients where they didn't have like the online account opening, and their main conversion was schedule an appointment, and it really wasn't getting very much activity because people really don't want to do that. And even just a small change that we did for that was we noticed that the connect with us button was getting some more activity. So we kind of moved that one to the top of the page, and they were more likely to kind of click on that. And kind of going off what Caitlin was saying about the options that you can have, I know that kind of a form submit has been more popular than kind of a learn more and kind of more of a dead end type CTA. Being able to, and also kind of going off what Kayla was saying, submit that form, give them your information and being reached back out to, not having to kind of go through the physical process of calling or visiting the branch. We've kind of seen some more activity for those types of end of the funnel options.
So we know why we need to diversify. We know what strategies and tactics we can use. What is the best way to measure? How can we measure those results?
ultimately you want to be seeing new accounts, new loans, whatever it is that you're promoting as the ultimate conversion. You want to see those accounts opened and those loans closed. Having the highest click-through rate in the world or a really efficient cost per click, that's great. But if it's not translating into results for your FI, then it's not really doing you a lot of good. So there's a couple of different things, that you can be looking at. There are benchmarks specifically that we can get into and can share.
Yeah, so we definitely firstly want to make sure that our performance KPIs are comparable to industry benchmarks. So that's really something that we do by doing some research every year just to kind of keep up with what are the typical click-through rates, cost per click, or conversion rate for specifically the finance sector. Just making sure that our kind of performance KPIs are measuring up to those. And also getting into our own Panos benchmarks. So being able to benchmark against yourself is really important as well. I know for us, we use that kind of also to hold ourselves to a higher standard where we know our strategies, our processes, and we want to know kind of how across all of our accounts those campaigns are performing. So what are we seeing on average for each ad type specifically? How are those kind of benchmarks changing year over year? And more importantly, how are we improving? Are we staying up with the trends? Are we staying up with new competition as time goes on? That really comes into play when we're seeing kind of even specifically a newer campaign. Are we starting off on a good foot, or something that has been running for a little bit longer? Are we staying up with industry? Are we staying up with our own standards? Definitely important to be able to have those measurements in order to see kind of fully how that performance is going.
Yep, absolutely. And I mean, really, the key is if you're seeing your own results improve month over month, even if you can't track it to new accounts opened or new loans closed, anything like that, if you're seeing your own metrics that are improving every month, then that shows that you're on the right track.
So wrapping things up a little bit here. First of all, thank you all for joining us. If you guys have any questions or just want to reach out to any of us, I mean, we have one big bucket email where you can get any of us that you want. It's media@panosmarketing.com. If you'd like to reach out individually, my email is kdeluca@panosmarketing.com. Find me on LinkedIn, connect me on LinkedIn if you feel like it. Kaylin, where can they find you?
kgallagher@panosmarketing.com, or also I am on LinkedIn.
And then same thing, Abby, where can they find you?
Same situation, you'll have the same emails. Estabrook@panosmarketing.com and LinkedIn as well would be fine.
Well, I think that kind of brings us to a nice wrap up here. Have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone. Thank you for joining us.